What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Sunbelt Syndicate, an Easter edition. I tried to put some pastel colors on our little graphic for the show tonight. I know it's past Easter, but going in, we didn't have anything Easter themed, so we'll do the Easter theme afterward. And look, Seth came prepared. He's wearing the pastel teal of the Chanticleers there, representing. Marv's got the App State stuff, and I'm going with the brand itself, living and breathing the brand. So Sunbelt Syndicate shirt on for me. How we doing, gentlemen? How was Easter weekend?
Good, man. John Cena's the champ again. So
all is right in the world.
All is well.
Yeah. Yeah. 17-time reigning champ, right? He took over Ric Flair's record now, right?
Believe so.
Yeah. I think Flair had 16 and Cena now has 17, or I think that's how it went. And Marv, you said your kids are currently catching up on WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, they're watching it now. We didn't get a chance to, so they're watching the main event from Saturday night, the triple threat match, and we'll start digging through Sunday stuff later on this week.
We're really going. Nice. We're rolling the dice tonight, going head to head with Raw after Mania edition That's tonight. True. So let's see how the ratings go this week.
That's a good point. It's a good point. So far, no comments, so that might be where everyone's at.
Oh no.
We'll have to keep an eye out.
It's Artie when you need them.
I know,
Ben
right?
Ben and Artie come through for us.
The resident experts of the Sunbelt Syndicate. Well, hopefully they jump on relatively soon. Our sponsors, Dubby Energy, Fanplex Graphics, TSN Off Road, and Dano's Seasoning. And we are working in the background on a few new sponsors. So keep an eye out for that. We may have some stuff coming down the pipeline that may be a little bit more exciting too. But yeah, like I said, Fanplex Graphics, man, these two pictures here, I don't know what they're going to come out with for football season, and maybe they'll start coming out with some graphics for some other sports too. I'm going to have to send a message about that because I think there'd be some people that might buy a Caleb Cross picture, maybe, fellas.
Hint, hint, hint.
Hint, yeah. hint. Yeah, we got a number of pitchers. There's 4 pitchers listed on the D1 Pitcher of the Year nominations. I think right now there's still like a list of 50 or 75 of them or something. There's a lot right now. They got to dwindle it down. Let's see. Riley Eckhoff, Coastal Carolina, J.B. Middleton, Southern Miss, Griffin Miller from Marshall, and Jacob Morrison, also from Coastal Carolina. I'm a little surprised Cross isn't on that list as well with his performance thus far, but maybe you can add somebody later. I'm not sure how that works, to be honest. But yeah, there's a ton of candidates at the moment, but still pretty cool to have 4 in there from the Sunbelt, regardless of who it is. So those 4 names kind of sticking out there early on. Let's bring up the graphic for tonight's game, or for tonight's game. Kind of like a game, right? For tonight's episode, we got the egg-shaped baseball. So I was lucky enough to find that. And can anybody tell me who's hitting that egg-shaped baseball there in that picture?
Looks like
Lichenberger.
There you go. I didn't think you guys would struggle with that, but yeah, we gave him a little shout-out since he's been on fire, true freshman there for App State in that picture, launching the Easter egg ball. And guess who just showed up?
There he is.
Mr. Artie Cat himself. Hey, y'all. What's going on, Artie? Thanks for tuning in. I don't know. Maybe Artie's not a WrestleMania fan or a wrestling fan in general. Maybe that's why he's here tonight. We'll have to see if he responds to that at all, being a wrestling fan or not. It might be more like Seth, where Seth was a much bigger fan back in the day, right? WCW
Before
days.
It was cool. Yeah.
Before when it was still real.
When it was still real. Absolutely. Yeah. When it was still real.
Oh, man. Well, let's wait no further. Everyone's favorite part of the show, the weekly picks review. And here's how we did this past week. Looks like Marv caught absolutely.
Yeah, boys. Yeah. We needed that.
Hey, Marv, ring the bell, man, and explain away. Did you just take random chances? Were you really confident in all these picks? What happened to give you this week?
So if you paid attention the past couple of weeks, I picked no sweeps, right? Because I just think sweeps are hard to get. Obviously, there was one this weekend, but App was playing good ball. JMU wasn't. I think ODU is not that great of a baseball team. Heck, they've only won 12, 13 games. Coastal, I thought that the Herd could have taken one. Their Friday and Sunday guys have been pretty solid. Same thing, Georgia Southern. I thought they were better than Arkansas State. Troy, I thought ULM was coming in a little hot, so they might take a game, which they did. Southern Miss, that was the one I was sweating the most. I thought that, man, they just might go ahead and sweep. And then the South Alabama one, man, I thought Texas State was going to get that. But, five out of 7, I'll take that all day.
Yeah. By far and away, the best week we've had probably ever, since this is the first year we've done all 7 games for each week so far. Shout out. I think, Seth, was it you that called to do that? You were the one pushing that, or was that Marv?
Yeah, Marv. But yeah, great job, Marv. That never happens, especially this year.
Vegas,
way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, you should have just put a little bit of a parlay on that, man.
I don't think Vegas does it like that, but if they did, I would have recouped a little bit of the money that I've lost all season.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know how Vegas doesn't do. You can't predict the series outcome. Is that what it is? You just pick who wins or loses, or is it?
I think you just pick a. I don't even know if they do college baseball, to be honest. And Major League Baseball, they typically just do. You pick the team, and they'll give you like a half a run or a run and a half or whatever. But listen, great week. I'm still 20-26 overall. So if you put it all together, still pretty bad. But yeah, I'll take this week. That feels good.
I don't know. I think, you and Seth aren't separated by more than 2 games at this point right now. Our records, sure, they look ugly, but I need to go back, and I did it up until last week, maybe even 2 weeks ago. I went back and did the records again if we only predicted who won the series.
Okay.
Greatly, superior to the records that we have in this form. So when people say, "Oh, they don't know what they're talking about," I have to say, no, that's not true.
I think a monkey could pick the winner of each series. Look at me. I pick the Marshall series over Southern Miss. Case in point. But your ULM, well, explain that.
My ULM pick? Yeah. So Troy was number 20. They had yet to lose a series of any sort, conference or otherwise, so far. But they've had some games that have surprised me here and there. Again, they haven't had multiple in a row, so maybe that's where I should have smartened up. I just thought with the way ULM was playing, winning is contagious. They've been pretty good. Probably also should have leaned on the fact, though, that this was in Troy and not in Monroe. But I took the chance, right? We've seen some things kind of jump up and surprise us a little bit. Seth, you just mentioned your big pick, the Marshall over Southern Miss pick earlier in the season. This was kind of my pick there like that, and it wouldn't have ultimately shocked me too much for ULM to come out, but it did look really like a bad pick after those first 2 games of early ends before the run rule was enacted. So it didn't look good, but they did come out and at least get that last one. And of course that gets Marv the victory there. Although Seth, you were right there. Had Troy pulled that last one out and earned the sweep, you would have closed the gap between you and Marv, and both ended up with 4 wins and just 3 losses. So a lot of games that kind of did that, right? App could have swept JMU and I would have been right, and you guys both would have had that one wrong. So just kind of a fun week to really pick the games. I think it's fun every week, to be honest, but there was a couple ones that turned.
Only 4 weeks left, man.
I know.
Only 4 weekends left.
It's crazy how fast it's gone. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get to a Coastal game, which I have technically. I went to the UNC Coastal game. I'm going to get to an App game, which we will be going to. Marv, we were talking before you jumped on. You're not going to be there Friday for Southern Miss App. You're going to be there Saturday?
And that's debatable at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's debatable at this point. Have you bought tickets yet for Saturday?
I'm not going to be there Saturday. The only game I'll be able to make at all is Friday.
Okay. Seth, have you bought your tickets for Saturday yet? Okay.
It's looking like rain this weekend anyways.
Yeah, we'll talk off air, but we're kind of up in the air because we've got some rainouts makeup games for Friday and Saturday now.
Oh boy.
But if it rains here, then that could switch things. If it's raining here, rain there, whatever. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, the hope is that we get to go up there, see Southern Miss, a big baseball school, one that we've been excited about before the matchup was even thought of as a ranked one. And obviously Southern Miss will still come in ranked no matter what happens earlier this week because they have a ranking already. So that will be a fun matchup. Regardless, we're excited to see our boy Caleb Cross on the mound, and hopefully Friday goes down. Hopefully most of the games of the weekend get played. But again, sounds like it's a little bit up in the air. I want to throw it back to Artie. He said he's been to WrestleMania when it was in Anaheim, California, and JBL was the champion. I don't remember what year that was. I bet our resident wrestling historian, Seth, might have some idea about when JBL was last champion. No? Yeah, I don't know either.
I just remember him and Farouk were together. Remember the APA?
Yeah. That was. I like that one. That was good. That was where
Farouk was an All-American, was he not? Ron Simmons?
Yes. He was actually there. There's a pretty big debate that he's probably the best ever football player to transition to wrestling, which is saying a lot when you've got the likes of a couple big name guys who were pretty good back in the day playing football. But he was absolutely phenomenal on the football field. So for him to transition to wrestling may have started some more of that transition that we've seen of here in recent years. I just wish, like so many of the football guys, just have the spear. We need something different from the football guys. Bring me something new.
Hey, off topic, 2 questions. Are you doing a basketball show this week? And number 2, I don't know if you and TJ have this in the plans or not, but we should do a portal show here before too long for football.
So we did a portal show last year. Let me just take this off while we talk about that. We did a portal show last year. It was about 3 hours long. We had other podcasters that cover the teams more specifically and more in depth. What we tried to give was kind of a quicker, easier preview for all that. One of our most successful shows. So the interest and intrigue is there. It takes a lot of background work to kind of set that up, put that together, have all the graphics ready. One thing that we may do, and I still have a lot of work to do, but I would like to do this before, so that means Wednesday night, is a Sunbelt draft preview. We did do that a little bit last year. I'd like to do that again this year. Mike Green is almost completely obviously the first pick of the Sunbelt players that could be taken and will very likely go in the first round. And there was even a debate on Twitter today whether Mike Green would go higher than Ashton Genty, which most people think he should. But the group of 5 guys said, well, besides Ashton Genty, who will be the first group of 5 guy to go? And it's like, well, I think Mike Green's actually going to be the first guy picked there. Anyway, regardless, Wednesday, look out for that. We're going to put that together. Hopefully TJ and I can finalize all that and get that worked out, but not officially official just yet. If we don't get it done beforehand, we'll certainly do like a wrap up after. But yeah, I'd love to do a portal show.
But no basketball show.
No basketball show.
No, all right, okay. Whew.
Oh, and this one's good. Artie says we need to do a top 10 baseball movies or shows at the end of the season. Yeah, we could do that one whenever. But yeah, you're right. End of the season may just be easiest, right?
Hold on, let's just do this real quick. Favorite baseball movie of all time? Go.
Major League.
Man, that's tough.
Rookie of the Year's up there too.
Sandlot.
Oh, the Sandlot. Yeah, I think that's me. Sandlot, because I can watch that one like anytime. I think I'd have to be in the mood for a couple of the other ones.
My boys are not old enough for Major League yet. Rookie of the Year, phenomenal. But Sandlot, classic.
What about Angels in the Outfield, fellas?
That's a bad one.
That's not a bad one.
That's a forgotten one. Angels in the Outfield.
Well, it obviously is just a tiny bit cheesy, but like you as a dad and everything now, you feel that one, right? Like that hits you right in the feels.
What was the one where the kid became like the manager of the Twins?
The Twins. I was about to ask that one. Not Little Big League, was it?
No. Well,
was it Little Big League?
Already saying Paladin Western episode. I'm not sure what the reference there is. Artie may have to further explain that one. Who's looking up the Minnesota Twins thing?
I am.
It's Little Big League, I'm pretty sure.
Little Big League. Yep.
There we go.
That's a good one. That's forgotten.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Okay. Here's another question. What recent baseball movie has been any good besides Moneyball? Like I can't think like good. There was Moneyball was good. But when we were growing up, there was a bunch of kid baseball movies, and I feel like those don't even exist anymore.
Have you ever heard of Trouble with the Curve? Clint Eastwood's a scout for the Braves.
Yep.
It's a good one.
I've heard of it.
There's another one that came out. I think it might be a Disney movie. It's called 12. It's about a kid that moves to a new town, doesn't make his little league all-star team because the coach is playing daddy ball, and he so his dad takes him to the town the next town over. He makes the little league all-star team for that one, and they end up beating the other team in the championship. It's actually pretty cool. I think it's based on a true story that the kid ended up playing in college and maybe got drafted, but that's been a popular movie in my house last year or so.
Angels in the Outfield, though. Artie just said it again. That one was good.
How about why am I drawing a blank?
He's also saying Paladin was an old Western from the early 60s, so that was before our time. And I don't know anything about that.
So not to get off topic, but talking about football movies, you know what my favorite was?
Sorry, I just read Artie's comment before I put it on the screen. The Natural.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's the female baseball movie?
A League of Our Own.
League of Our Own. That's a super underrated movie. That's a great movie.
It's very good too. But Seth, we cut you off, so I want to go back to what you were saying before that.
So being a Cowboys fan, like at that age when that movie came out, like Little Giants, those Cowboys jerseys and that little oh my gosh.
The annexation of Puerto Rico.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I think we could do a whole show just on movies.
Oh, we could. We could definitely do that. But we'll save getting off on that a little bit further. North Dallas 40 is my favorite football movie. Okay. I've heard of that.
Some years on those here.
So I got to go back and watch some of these classics that he's talking about that I don't know as much about. Like I said, I know North Dallas 40 by name, but I don't know.
One of Marv's favorite movies involved Dallas, but it wasn't that one.
Oh God, that was good. I like that.
PG show, buddy. PG show.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, getting back to the task at hand with the baseball after the Dallas reference. All right. Who was a little bit surprised? I was surprised that Wake Forest handled Coastal on Tuesday 15-5. I thought that game, first of all, I thought Coastal could very much win that game.
Yep.
I'm not surprised or shocked Wake Forest did win, but I am surprised and shocked that they won by 10 runs.
Yeah, I would have thought they could have hung in there a little bit better. I think it's the second time they played this year. And I think the second
time they lost too, right?
Yeah, I think the first result was fairly similar. I think Coastal held it close for a while and then ended up getting blown out. Marshall hung tough with West Virginia. West Virginia's only lost like 4 games this season. They're a pretty good baseball team.
Did you see how they won that game, West Virginia?
I didn't.
Oh, Seth, did you happen to see that?
I saw Twitter, but I can't remember exactly what happened.
They stole home.
That's what
the pitcher never saw it. He didn't even release the ball. Like I think he's a lefty. It was a lefty pitcher on the mound. It just didn't. They must have seen something on film or during the game that just said he's just not paying attention. If you see him turn, go. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it, but a horrible way to lose in your home ballpark against a heated rival that you always want to beat in everything, right? They don't ever give you the respect in there.
Too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there was definitely a good amount of West Virginia fans there, so you got to hate that for Marshall and the Herd fans because you know they really, really wanted that one. A game that usually Marv and I would try and get to because it's local for us, Duke versus App State. A lot better than last year when we saw that game. What was it, 22-2 or something last year?
It was bad. You know, App played decent. They had one really bad inning. Duke hit the ball. I think it was the 3rd inning or something like that. Duke just strung together, 6 consecutive hits. Yeah. Other than that, you take the inning out, App played pretty good. Just for me, a couple surprises. Mercer beating Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
ULM taking down La Tech. South Alabama losing, and Southern Miss struggled a little bit with SLU.
Shocker, Texas State went midweek.
Dude, don't schedule Texas State on a Tuesday or Wednesday.
that one was a little bit more predictable because they're playing Houston Christian. But yes, 9-3, they didn't struggle at all there. They just seemed to struggle in conference. Which
once again, they're boosting their resume for Texas State champions.
Yeah, it's crazy. Ben just joined the show as well. So Ben, I'm sure he's watching as he usually does us with Raw after WrestleMania because he seems to be a big wrestling fan as well. So we'll see. He says Silva said A-State is headed in the right direction. The series versus Georgia Southern. I think they are. I mean, it's hard to say that when you see where they are in the RPI and where they are in the standings, but more recent results maybe lend you to believe that they are headed in the right direction. One last note, VCU versus ODU. I didn't know who was going to win that game, but 16-13 sounds like a weird football score. That's crazy. Anyway, on to Thursday, because, again, short week. We had Thursday, Friday, Saturday for the weekend slate due to the Easter holiday on Sunday, so we only had 1 day of midweek games. So our conference play started Thursday. We had to me, the biggest surprise of the night was ODU battling the Cajuns in the 10th inning, and the Cajuns just getting the better of them there at the end, 6-5. But I don't know. What do you guys think on anything else you've seen here?
South Alabama 10-run rule in Texas State.
Yeah.
Yeah, just 8 innings on that one, 15-5. That's what is that? That's the same score as Wake Forest and Coastal, right?
Yeah.
Shout out Double C for his third consecutive complete game. Dude's allowed 3 or 4 runs in 36 innings or something crazy like that. I
think his game was Saturday or Friday this week, though, right?
Sorry.
Yeah,
He didn't go Thursday. He went Friday. Yeah, well, It's okay because it's all confusing because of.
I think Wilson pitched most of the game on Friday.
He did. I think he got 6 innings in and pitched phenomenal. Coastal just did what Coastal does, man. Coastal's rolling, and I'm sure we'll get into it here in a little while, but how in the heck Troy jumped Coastal in the rankings this week just blows my mind.
Yeah, especially with how they handled business, right? I mean, I think we'll jump right into Friday now. I think, they run ruled Marshall 2 games in a row there. So not even a crazy outcome there. The most shocking one on Friday for me was Georgia State taking it to USM 12-2, run ruling them after – wait, were they run ruled in that first game? No, they weren't. It was 8-1, though, so it wasn't all that close. But, man, that one I did not see coming. But let's be honest, Georgia State can straight out hit the ball. They just haven't been consistently doing it against some of the better teams. So to see them spark up like that against Southern Miss after that first game seemed like, okay, we kind of know how this series is going to go, right? It left a lot of doubt going into Sunday when you score 12 runs in one game.
Yeah, this weekend was fun because, going into Saturday, which was Sunday, right? Apple's going for the sweep. Coastal was going for the sweep. I think every other series was a rubber match.
Yep.
So everybody had a lot to play for. You had
Troy was the only other one going for a sweep on Saturday.
That's right. Okay, so you had 4 of the 7 series, rubber match. You had 3 teams trying not to get swept and 3 teams trying to get the sweep. So it made Saturday a lot of fun to watch baseball.
Yeah.
I would love to have somebody on this show that knows what they're talking about when it comes to RPI and rank. Like Marv just said, rankings, RPI, how you drop, does it really matter at this point? I mean, apps, are they going to climb the top 50 in RPI? Probably not, but
they got a big
24, dropping 23, 24 spots because you took a series 2 to 3 or 2 out of 3 of that it's not adding up. I mean, and maybe we don't know exactly what we're talking about when it comes to RPI. Maybe somebody can enlighten us, but this back and forth every week is just a little bit mind blowing.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to give a quick shout out as we jump over to Saturday's game. Jacob Ballard was on our Facebook graphic for the weekend and letting us know some interesting stats about Troy. So Troy does not complete the sweep, drops that last game to ULM there to still win the series, all right? They already had it locked up going into Sunday. But Troy, after this weekend, is now 0-4 in game 3s when leading 2-0.
Wow.
When they are tied going into the last game, they're 2-0. On Sunday in the conference, so usually they're game 3, they're 2-3 overall, but they are, in conference they're 2-3. Overall, they're 6-3. So they've been really good on Sunday games overall, both within the conference and the bigger picture. On Saturday, they have been 5-0 in conference and 8-1 overall.
Wow.
So don't play Troy on a Saturday. Try and catch them on a Friday or a Sunday. You're having a little bit better chance.
All I heard was their Saturday guy's a stud.
That's one way to look at it as well. There
Are all these games on Sunday played before 2:00 with a temperature over 70, with the wind blowing at 9 miles an hour to the west? Is that what we're getting at here?
Yep. And see, that's the funny thing too. Like when you can do that stat and make it look and sound good, and then if you go pick it out, I'm not saying this is specific to Troy at this point, but let's just say that they're games that they've had on a lot of Sundays before conference play started was a weaker opponent, right? Then you're like, well, yeah, of course it is. I'm not saying that's the case here. We'd have to go back through the schedule game by game. We're not going to do that on this part of the show for sure. But, you can make stats look really interesting one way or another. And that's one way to make it look, which is interesting to hear that and see that. But, Anyway, jumping over to the standings, we have Coastal Carolina clearly atop the standings this week, 14-4, 30-10 overall. The first team in the conference to get to 30 wins on the season. So that makes perfect sense about why they are one spot below Troy in the standings, right? In the D1 rankings.
Yeah, like I said, it blows my mind that you could sweep a team and Troy drops one, and Troy jumps him in the standings. And Coastal actually sweeps a team and drops 3 in RPI.
Not only that, but if you look at the RPI by itself, after this weekend, but even before this weekend, it was close to this anyway. Coastal sits at 13, right? Is that what we said there, Marv?
Yeah, that's where they are right now.
Troy's at 39.
Mm-hmm. And
Coastal just swept.
Mm-hmm.
And hear them judge them week by week and not overall.
Well, for the RPI, you definitely got to do both. Yeah, it's just it's crazy. I don't quite understand it, and honestly, for the rankings, I'm just not sure how you surmise that, especially if they're in different conferences and they have some close records. It's one thing. They're in the same conference. I don't get it.
From what we've learned in a year and a half, 2 years almost, this is irrelevant. These standings to me,
True.
It's very irrelevant. I mean, maybe basketball and football, it's a whole nother story. But from what we've been told and what we've learned, you've got your top 4. That's what's good. Your top 3. That's what's going to matter no matter what at the end. But these rankings are, like Marv said, I mean, a team with an RPI of 140, 50, I mean, I don't care if they're ranked 25th in the nation. Like, it's not getting, obviously that's not true. But
here's something interesting to think about, all right? So we see the rankings in conference, right? Well, let's go through RPI. So Coastal's at 13, Troy's at 39, Southern Miss at 44. They're all tournament teams unless somebody implodes, right? I think we can all agree on that.
With one hosting, yes.
Yes. The third place team in the conference is App State. Their RPI is 166. All right. Yeah. Below that, Louisiana is at 115. Georgia Southern's at 90. Georgia State's at 123. Texas State is at 85. All right. And then South Alabama is at 133. So they're 30 spots ahead of App, who it doesn't make sense. I mean, I know a lot of it's strength of schedule and who you play, where you play them, when you play them. But it's hard to believe that the third best, the third ranked team or the fourth best team in the conference by standings is 166 in RPI.
What's wild is your 8th place team, Texas State, has a better chance RPI wise of making the tournament than your 4th best team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And considering the App swept Texas State at San Marcos.
Yeah. Just imagine where Texas State would be sitting if that record was flipped 10-8 with the non-conference wins they've had.
This goes to prove exactly that goes to prove those non-conference big RPI games. So I alluded to it a second ago. So App's got a massive week coming up, right? If App wants to have a chance, they got ETSU tomorrow. ETSU's RPI. Anybody want to guess that one?
I saw it, but I can
43
look it up.
52, yeah. And then they got Southern Miss coming to
big win against Tennessee too.
Yeah, so if App can win 3 games this week, it propels them or will tie them with Southern Miss in the conference, and they'd have 3 wins then against Q1 opponents. So that would.
But they also have some very tough losses as well.
They do. Listen, I'm trying not to be a homer here for a second, but the next 2 weeks for App are everything, right? They got ETSU, Southern Miss, and then they got Coastal. Like, if you're going to make your run, you have to make it now, because after that, you get swept in one of those series or you lose both of those series. Like, yes, you're going to go to the tournament and you can make a run in that, but if you want to build your resume, you've got 2 weeks to do it.
To piggyback off what you said, I don't think you just have to win. You have to win decisively, and there's no just winning one. You got to take, like you just said, 2 to 3.
Yeah,
I mean,
in my opinion, they got to win.
One's not going to do much.
My opinion, they got to be ETSU. They got to win 2 out of 3 against both Southern Miss and Coastal. They do that, they're firmly in the conversation of, holy crap, we might actually get 4 teams in.
Well, I think
they're pretty low.
I think they'd be in great position for the sunbelt tournament, and then it would greatly depend on how they do there to get a postseason berth. Because if they, are one and done, which they wouldn't be if they were in that position after beating USM and Coastal, but if they were, within the top couple seeds and they're making it to Sunday and losing the championship game, maybe that's still enough with what the rest of the resume would have.
Are you saying, going off what Marv just said, even with a good run to the end of the season, it's still not going to be good enough, is what you think?
I'm not saying it's not going to be good enough. I would say, though, that you're really going to have to lean on how they do versus how another team in another conference does on their postseason conference tournament, right? Like, that's what's going to come down to the final thing is that what does that last game look like, right? Were you eliminated early in the conference tournament, or were you all the way there to the end? And I'm not even saying them or whoever they're up against has to win it to make it in, but that's where the conversation comes. Because I think if you win your conference tournament, there's a whole lot of people that are going to elevate you immediately for doing something like that. But if you're both not winning, but both have made it somewhat far, that might be that final measuring point. So it's best to position yourself resume-wise now to get that better seed so that you stand a better chance to get there further in the end. But it also goes back to this past weekend. Dropping that last game to JMU was huge. It was worth what are we guesstimating, like 20-some points in the RPI just for losing that one game, even though they'd already won the series. They'd clinched the series.
No, going off what Marv said a minute ago, I would fully support that idea a little bit more if they had swept JMU. Then you're sitting at our 120 RPI, and then you have a heck of a week. This week you could creep into the top 80, with 3 out of 4. But I mean, we talk like that's normal. It could that's a tall task. That's an extremely. I mean, we're sitting here talking like, take 2 from Coastal, take 2 from Southern Miss. I mean,
you got to play your best baseball. You have to play your best baseball
a lot
for 2 consecutive weeks.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that you have to look at on the schedule at that point too is that you've got USM at home. You have to take advantage of hosting that team.
Yes.
Right. You're in your home ballpark. When you go to Coastal on the road, whole different ball game, right? They're going to be favored. They're going to be expected to win. They're going to be expected to win big. So here's go ahead and take advantage of what's coming up first. Obviously, you don't look into the future as a player or a coach, but yeah, that's kind of where you have to be there. I'm noticing too as I stare at this graphic more, it's bothering the hell out of me. That number 22, I must have hit enter on the one.
And just looking ahead at some other big matchups. Texas State at Troy.
Yes.
Troy is coming in with a 39 RPI, Texas State at 85. So that's a really big one. And then, man, my notes are bad. Is it Southern or State that goes to the Cajuns this weekend?
I believe it's Southern. We could jump over to that. Let me
bring Southern up RPI one more time, Marv.
Georgia Southern's at 90. So going to
Georgia Southern's at Louisiana.
Yeah. So okay. So Georgia Southern's at 90 and Louisiana's at 115. So I mean that's a pretty big matchup there. Any one of those teams gets a sweep. Obviously, it propels them forward in the right direction.
It's crazy to me that a team in front of them is 50 to 60 points RPI lower.
Well, in all fairness, Georgia Southern swept App.
True. That's why it's so crazy. I mean,
they also swept Texas State, who has 50 points higher.
Yeah, but once again, they beat Texas
A&M, Oklahoma State. Texas A&M, that win right now looks really good. I don't know if you guys follow anybody out of the Sun Belt, but that team is hot right now.
Yeah, they went through a massive slump, but they are playing really good baseball. And that Texas one looks good. Texas is still top 3 team?
Yeah. They are number 1 in D1 rankings and number 2 in RPI.
There you go.
33-5 overall.
That helps.
You think that midweek guy should be in the weekend rotation for Texas State?
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, who the hell ever they're throwing on a Tuesday night? Like, that's your long reliever on a Friday or Saturday.
Yeah. That's crazy. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's if you want that 4th team, your best chances right now are obviously, to me, Texas State, Georgia Southern, or Louisiana. I'm not sure ODU and Down can afford very many more losses.
ODU's won 13 games. They're not getting in. Like, they'll be happy to get into the Sun Belt Conference tournament, right? Like, they're not making the tournament. It's crazy that App is as low as they are.
We're holding out for an 8-10 team in conference to be our 4th team now.
I mean, well, here's the thing.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
You have to really, what we've seen over the years is you got to be over 500 and have a good RPI. Your conference, like you were just saying, Seth, your conference record, I mean, they care about it, sure, but it's not – everything else is actually bigger deal than your conference record. Otherwise, not so many SEC teams would make the tournament, right? I mean, SEC teams are making the tournament with below 500 conference records because the conference is so hard. But
remember, we asked almost every coach in our preseason interviews, what's the win total? What do you think you have to get? And resoundingly, it was 35 to 38 wins is where they thought you had to be, because that means you took care of business in conference and you took care of your non-conference. So, I mean, hell, Coastal's almost there. Troy's almost there. Southern Miss is almost there. App's got some work to do. They've got, 16 games left?
They also got 6 of those 16 with teams inside the top 25. So, like you said, it's time to do some work. We'll see if we can get a 4th in. Pulling for App. Also pull for the Bobcats. I'd like to see them. They deserve it. But
I think there's a reason to pull for the Bobcats. We've seen that they can beat big teams with big arms and big bats. And, when you have a team like that, you put them into a weekend series with some teams from some other conferences, and they're just not going to be scared, right?
As long as they don't have to play Sunbelt teams in a regional, I think they're fine. Like Marv said.
Hey, listen, they got a prove it series this weekend with Troy.
They do. Yeah. And there's where it proves, right, that you get above 20 wins. You get to 500 or better in conference, and everybody's looking at you a little different. But right now, it's crazy to think they're outside of the top 7 in this conference as we sit right now today.
Yeah, but with an 80.
Yeah, very true. Very true. 87 and growing, or 85 and growing, whatever it is.
Everybody must be watching Raw tonight. We don't have much going on.
Well, Ben, you're saying, I'm curious who the A-State next AD will be. Announcement of him stepping down currently. So we will see what happens there. Lose a basketball coach, lose an AD. We'll see what transpires at A-State, because we know the baseball going up. All right, so best in class for the week, single A, double A, triple A, the show stays the same. We have our 3 ranked teams still up there at the top of this class ranking, as Southern Miss, Troy, and Coastal stay firmly planted at the top. I kept App in triple A, even with the loss to JMU being down there in single A there. But I think I moved ULM up, or maybe they were there last week. I can't remember off the top. I think they might have been there last week after that hot week they had.
Yeah, they got to go down.
Yeah, I debated it, but then they pulled that one out against Troy on Sunday, and I said, I have a lot of other movement in the single and the double A. In double A,
they did beat La Tech in the midweek, so they went to week.
Yes. So that was the other, and they didn't struggle in that La Tech victory. What was that score? 8-3, I think, right?
Yep.
Or 9-3.
I still have them double A.
Okay. Well, I kept them up there in triple A because honestly, we were getting kind of loaded up in the other one. And I thought, they done, like you said, it was a combination of the midweek plus the weekend series there.
Where did you have Georgia State last week, Don?
Georgia State last week was I believe in double. I think they stayed. I believe. So yeah, we've got the 2 Georgia schools in double A along with the Cajuns and South Alabama. And then in single A, Texas State, ODU, JMU, Arkansas State, and Marshall. Marshall's on a tough little stretch right now. I believe they've lost their last 5 straight.
Yeah.
Yes. Tough little stretch there for Marshall after going into that App State series, man. It looked like they could be the team that could go on a tear. And now they're down there, 163 as far as RPI is concerned. So, all right.
Still ahead of App.
They are. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, right?
Let me ask you this. Marshall continues to lose. Does Southern Miss's ranking go down?
It can, yeah. It does. And same thing with JMU. That's why the App loss to JMU is so important, because if JMU continues to lose the rest of the season, that loss looks even worse as you get further apart. Now,
that's one loss, man. That's wild to me. How if you don't sweep a team, you're being penalized 20-some points in RPI. That's insane to me.
That's the other part too, right? Like now that game's over, you're not going to see that team again, right? But you're still going to get penalized for their performance the rest of the season. I hope that there is some calculation in the RPI system that at least favors more recent matchups than looking back into the past, right? Like, okay, so they did lose to JMU. That is a bad loss. But they just beat, let's just go for example, let's say that they beat ETSU this week. I mean, that should almost cancel out, like at worst, right? Like, okay, they beat a high-ranking RPI team. They lost to a low one. Wash. Neither game really going to, boost or take you down.
Is that game?
I'm not sure that's how it works, right? Like,
is that game at home tomorrow night?
Should be.
Or are they going to Johnson City?
They've already played in Johnson City.
Okay.
Home, yes. The home team, it should be the team on the right in this schedule.
Texas State hosting Texas? Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Number 1 team out for blood.
Yeah. And Artie's got a good question. He's saying single A this week. Yeah, that's maybe a little rough, but
I'm fighting for you, Artie.
You did lose the series 2-1 to South Alabama, so
that's true.
We had to punish something there, just like JMU losing 2-1 to App. They got dropped from double to single.
We're about as good at this best in class as we are at the picks. So just it is what it is.
Well, the only ones we're really good and confident with are the top, right?
No, I mean by the time we get done with this, we've all argued our point to where we kind of all agree with each other. By the time it's said and done. And after the first 2 weeks, I've kind of laid off.
You could say somebody did. Yeah, that's true. Well, the first argument you want to go to is the most recent, right? Which is the conference weekend series. But then you have to include like the stuff that happened in the midweek, right? So that's where Texas State is such a weird team to put in this, because they'll have a hell of a midweek game and they'll win. And then they'll come into a conference series that they should easily win if you take down a ranked opponent. Why aren't you beating the team that's 100 points lower in RPI and not as good as you, kind of thing? But then they lose. It's so hard to really nail this down. And maybe we should have more rankings than 4. And that's the other part of it.
I think going back with what Marv said a few minutes ago, and I've said it a few times, baseball is such a grind all through the year. The teams at 35 to 40, they're going to separate themselves. You're not going to see an Arkansas State schedule Division II schools all year long, then win a few conference games and win, and have 40 wins. Like those top 3 teams are going to, when it's all said and done, they're probably all going to be sitting at 38 to 40 wins. Their body of work is going to be those top 3 in the show in the year. That's what you're going to have, because consistent all year long. I think Coastal's lost 4 games out of 35, something crazy like. I mean, it's just consistency, and those 3 teams right there, week in and week out, show it. And I think we can sit here and debate single A, double A, and triple A all year long, but those two losses to Marshall was just on, and Southern Miss wasn't touching them. But you play that series to 10 games. Southern Miss is taking at least 7, I'd say. So I mean, it's just consistency all year long, and those 3 teams have shown it. And I'm pulling for Coastal. I hope they get a regional, and I hope it's their time to go back. And Troy too. I mean, all three of them.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it'll be hard for the Sun Belt to get more than one host, but I think Coastal stands the best chance. So that would be cool if that happens.
I think Troy's definitely at number 2 somewhere. Troy and Southern Miss.
I would agree with that. And listen, if they all go on a run, right? Like, here's the cool thing: all three of those teams have the facility to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I think money-wise, though, you're not going to say no to Coastal. But money-wise, Marv talks about this too. You have a SEC school hosting or over at Troy. I mean, if it comes down to picking one of the two, who are you going with? You know what I mean?
Well, the other thing you'd have to put up a fight with is the seating capacity. For most of the SEC schools, that's going to be superior to what we're looking at in the Sun Belt, unfortunately.
No,
which
right.
It's not shocking, right? Football's the same way, right? Like, it's just going to be.
I've always wondered if App was ever to host, and I've seen it before in the tournament where they could go. Some smaller schools would go to, like, say App should be a number 1 seed. They would go to Wake. Wake would host, and App would be the 1, and Wake would be the 2. I don't know if you guys. I've seen that over. So I guess it would be possible.
I'd almost wonder, to that point, Seth, Hickory's been very kind to App, and they now have, the campus, the satellite campus. I know other schools have this kind of thing too, and Georgia Southern has some satellite campuses as well. I'm not sure how many other schools in the Sun Belt do, but if you have another city where you have a campus, especially, and a stadium, like a minor league ballpark that kind of fits it, could you just say, hey, if you're going to take a hosting opportunity away from us, we'd like to present you with something first. We've got a 12,000 capacity minor league ballpark who's going to let us have it for the weekend because they happen to be away that weekend. And we'd love to, split revenue with you or I don't know what the deal would be, but it would be interesting to see if you could work something out like that because, hey, we don't want to lose that opportunity to have our team be the host here.
Didn't we talk about last year that Duke had lost the ability to host because of their stadium?
We talked about the Bulls possibly. Yeah, we did talk about that.
Yeah. Well, and you also have to think too, in that realm, private school with money, like they can probably go rent out a stadium a whole lot easier than a public school.
I don't understand why, like you said, a private school with money and the success that they've had recently, not trying to crap on Duke, but we've been to that stadium. That is a terrible baseball stadium. The field's really nice.
Yes.
Everything else about it sucks. They have porta potties. They don't have restrooms. They have porta potties. There's no concessions. There's not really good viewpoints throughout the stadium. I mean, it blows my mind that a school with that kind of money, but we talked about it last year. Cameron's old and whatever, but there's a lot of history there. Not a lot of history at that ballpark. They could definitely have a better facility than what they have.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Ben is saying, I know A-State won't be good in my lifetime. Well, that's a rough way of looking. Not with that attitude, Ben, they won't.
Hey, you got that NIL money coming in, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Dominic jumping in saying, what's up, fellas? What's going on, Dominic? Thanks for joining in. Artie Cat saying, Texas State has one in Round Rock. So using the Round Rock Express Stadium would be awesome. I've heard of that stadium. So I think that's one of those minor league ballparks that people really like. And he's saying that's being a satellite campus there in Round Rock. So that makes sense. Ben is saying A-State has none as far as satellite campuses are concerned. Yeah, I don't think a lot of Sunbelt schools have the satellite campus. I believe kind of across the board, satellite campuses are becoming lesser than. I know the Pennsylvania State University institutions are kind of actually downsizing theirs. Penn State has like 8 satellite campuses, right? They have like 100,000 plus students, right? They are like combining some of them and getting rid of 1 or 2. So satellite campuses are more of a thing of the past. I think now because of the online education that people can offer, they don't have to put the brick and mortar stuff down and do it that way, the old school way. They've moved on. Speaking of moving on, we will move on to this week's upcoming slate. First of all, Tuesday, a big matchup with a regional aspect to it. Number 21, Coastal Carolina heads to the College of Charleston. An interesting matchup there, as we saw Charleston was on fire a little bit to start the year, right, guys? I think that was a team that like 2 or 3 of our teams went up against early this year.
I think you're right, and I think they've also traditionally been a pretty good baseball team. You know, schools that don't have football typically are good at other sports. So,
good point. Yeah, I think Coastal went up against them earlier. App went up against them, and I want to say Georgia Southern also already played CFC. So, interesting there. Beside that, we've got West Georgia taking on Georgia State. That's a rematch from just about a week ago. Georgia Southern's got a big one, and I was actually kind of surprised. I guess off the top of my head, maybe I was mixing up Florida State with Florida, but I was expecting to see a ranking besides Florida's name. They are not.
Florida was on TV there tonight. They got like they're well below 500 in conference. Okay. So I don't think they're
Gotcha. All right. Well, we've already kind of talked about that ETSU App State matchup, but go ahead, Marv. What were you going to say on that?
No, Georgia Southern sitting at a 90 RPI. I'm looking up Florida's RPI right now. Anytime you can go and play an SEC school at their house, a win's going to help you.
Yeah.
Which is funny. What if it doesn't? What if Florida's like 101 and it actually hurts them to go play at an SEC school?
I think
I'm looking that up right now. I don't think it's that bad. Just playing in
gain spots when they lose in the SEC. You know, as long as it's
you can. I've seen that. Yeah, it's insane.
So Florida's got a 23 RPI, and they're 27 and 15 overall.
What's the conference record? Does it say?
6-7.
Okay, so one game below 500. Interesting.
Yeah, so that'll be a massive quality win if Georgia Southern can pull that one off.
Yeah, it would, and that's not a big journey for them either. That's a pretty regional game there. Statesboro to Gainesville, I don't think is very far. Maybe within a 2-hour time range, maybe. ETSU App State, like I said, we already kind of talked about that one. Could be big for App in a midweek. Also, again, regional aspect. Morehead State goes up against Marshall. Grambling heads to the Cajuns to take them on. So should be an easy win there for the Cajuns, but we've seen some struggles in some midweeks games for them. So, they've got that 115 RPI right now. Probably that matchup with Grambling actually hurts them with where Grambling's sitting at. Tulane, Southern Miss, big rivalry across all sports. That one even bigger as USM looks to solidify that number 2 spot and jump up even further in the rankings. And then Artie Cat says, horns down, go Cat. So we'll do the horns down here too, because not a big fan of Texas myself, but they are sitting at D1 rankings, number 1 team. So yet again, another shot for Texas State to vastly improve that RPI and look even better across the board. Troy takes on Alabama State. Was Alabama State just took out, who was it, South Alabama last week?
It was somebody.
That was that game that jumped up and surprised, I think. And then Arkansas State, again, big rap. It seems like a lot of regional matchups this weekend as Arkansas State travels just over the road there to take on Memphis. I think that's an hour from each other. Wednesday slate, not quite as big. We actually have a rematch between Marshall and Morehead State. They switch hosting places. JMU goes up against Virginia, I believe, for the second time this year. Nichols goes up against the Cajuns. That one is a matchup that I think pretty much gets played every year with the regionality of that one. ULM rematches with La Tech. That one could be very interesting. Tarleton State taking on Texas State. Texas State got 2 midweek games, so they're going to probably throw everything they've got at Texas, and then they're going to have to rebound against a team who's going to want to do to them what they hopefully get done to Texas. So it'll be interesting to see how Texas State responds there. Another rematch with Southeast Louisiana and USM, and then South Alabama taking on the New Orleans Buccaneers, I think it is. That's a pretty sweet logo. I like that logo there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Any big matchups you want to highlight in those last 2 days there, guys?
ETSU out, Texas State, Texas, especially those two.
Yeah, I want to see. Virginia's not a ranked team, right? I didn't miss that, did I? I don't think so.
They were ranked like number 2. I guess they've fallen.
They really have fallen because they're not even in the outside teams looking in. The only one D1 had drop out this week was TCU. But here's some of the interesting things, right? We talked about the ranking, so we'll just go ahead and go back to this other look here. But some teams that didn't fare all that well this week. UCLA goes just 1-3, drops a couple spots. They were previously 10th. They dropped to 15. But a team like Coastal Carolina, who goes 3-1, who was number 21 last week, remains number 21 this week. So there's another team you throw out there and just go, all right, just explain something more to me, right? Like, Seth, you've said it about our rankings, right? We're talking about week to week here. Why aren't you moving these teams around a little bit more? Like, I feel like at this point, they feel like they belong in the 20s, so they're just going to keep them there in the 20s. When I don't know if that's all that accurate. I don't know.
I think somebody debated this earlier in the year when I made the comment of rankings didn't really matter. I mean, it's almost starting to get boring even talking about the rankings, my own opinion. I mean, Southern Miss was all the way up to 13th, and we were all excited about that. And then I think after the Marshall series, everybody just kind of platooned again. And I think at the beginning of the year, we're all waiting for conference to start, but it's really those games before, those big time series before conference starts, it's propelling you towards the end of the year. But those top 3 RPIs, I think that's what's going to ride us. There's not much moving here or there. I don't think they're really looking at the RPI or the rankings. I think the RPI is what we should focus a little bit more on. But we don't.
I'm almost wondering.
It's just.
I'm almost wondering too. You hate to say this, right? Because you hope these guys take this very seriously, and it's a job that they do. But was this week's rankings kind of mailed in with the Easter holiday, right? Like, they got a lot going on. Don't have time to break down exactly how everything went. Just got to look at the overall series and just be like, yep, just submit the ballot and be done with it. Like, maybe it was an aspect this week.
I can see it.
I can see it too. I'm looking at conference RPI right now. So Sunbelt's 5th overall conference RPI, which seems a little right behind the Big Ten, like super close to the Big Ten. And I bring that up to say, like, you lose a game in conference. If you're in a shitty conference, it makes sense, right? Like App losing to JMU. But we're in a pretty darn good conference. So if you win a series but lose a game, it shouldn't hurt you that bad.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah,
especially
are we in a good conference this year? I mean, arguing.
I'll argue.
You want to talk about every week how we're behind the SEC, ACC, and we're only getting 3. I mean, it's kind of almost settling to say we're good with 3 teams, in my opinion. So Artie's got a comment here. Baseball's long-term grind, and every game really counts in the long run. Puritan accept their job at Learfield. That's why he's stepping down. That's what Ben's saying about the AD at Arkansas State. Interesting aspect of why he stepped down there. But here's my argument to you, Seth, and I'll just use one team to make it real easy since Artie just commented too. Our 8th place team has beaten the number 1 team in the nation twice, right? Or was Texas not number 1 the first time they beat them? But they beat Texas A&M when they were number 1.
Yeah.
And they beat them. So that's it right there. Like, our teams are capable of jumping up and beating another team. We had Arkansas State, who is our worst team as far as RPI is concerned, go head to head with who was it that Arkansas. They went up against Arkansas, and until like the 8th inning, that game wasn't separated by more than a run or two, I think. Now it ended up being like 5-3 final or 6-3 final, something a little bit more than you'd hope to see. But like our teams that are at the bottom are still competing with the best teams in other conferences. So
Marshall almost beat West Virginia if it wasn't for home. So.
I agree. But baseball is a grind. Are you basing our conference being good on the body of work through the year, or how many teams you get into a regional?
So I'll say this. When I'm looking at a conference and how they've done, I don't care about how the conference beat each other up. Don't care. I want to see what that conference and those teams did against other ones, because I think that's the measuring stick. Once they get in there and they start battling each other and beating each other up, to me, that's not proving how good the conference is or isn't. That's just them battling it out. But how did they stack up against? Did they beat all the teams that were lower than them that they should beat up on? Did they compete with the better teams that either they were right with or should have beaten? So that's kind of how I measure a conference personally. But Marv, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's both. I think it's the cumulative body of work. Obviously, that gets you to how many teams that you get in. But, kind of to say everything that we've always said, if you got lower teams in your conference that are picking off big dogs, or being super competitive with highly ranked high RPI teams, it just goes to prove that every weekend that you show up to the ballpark, doesn't matter who you're playing, like you got to play good baseball or you're in trouble. So I think it's both.
Well, my other argument is you say big dogs. You know, we sit here and talk about how good the conference is every week. Do you, if we talk about how good the conference is every week, then there should not be another, the term big dog shouldn't be floated out there. You should be one of the big dogs if we're gonna talk the way we talk. So I'm just saying, do you walk around with that swagger of, yeah, we're top 4 conference, expect to win, or when we beat a team like Texas State beats a A&M or a Texas State, that's expected, or that's great for the little guy, So where are we hanging our hat at is what I'm trying to say.
Well, my thing is there's a problem with the system to start with, right? When you look at the RPI, there's a starting point. What's the starting point? You know what the starting point is. SEC is all up here at the top. The ACC is right below them, and that's how they go into the season. So they're already considered the big dogs before a pitch is even thrown, right? We expect these teams to be good, so they're going to be the high-ranking teams. Because let's face it, you can't have an RPI system without having a starting point. So the starting point is we're rewarding all the power programs and the teams that have more money because we expect them to be good. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we still have to call them the big dogs, even if we feel like we might be on par as far as the competition on the field, because they've been rewarded before this season ever started. They've been crowned this or crowned that before we ever even throw a pitch on the field.
Coastal beats in Alabama. We're not surprised.
No.
Right.
Right.
No. It's kind of like, told you. Think about this. How many teams in the top 10 RPI are not in the ACC or SEC?
Yeah.
There's 0. None.
Zero?
0. The closest one you get is 11, Oregon State, and then 13 Coastal. Other than that, and then you got a bunch of Big 12 teams jumping in. But if you look at top 25 RPI, 17 of them are from SEC or ACC. So, yeah, they have to be the big dog. Once again, money comes into play, right? Like, money doesn't come into play as much in baseball as I think it does in other sports, but it still comes into play. You go to those facilities, they're phenomenal. You see those dudes that they got coming up there, they're all – we mentioned it last year. You take an App State team and you march them into Durham, right? And Duke was a top 15 team, but do you remember the size difference of those guys? Like, every guy Duke sent up to the plate was 6'2", 6'3", 205. Every guy they brought out of the bullpen was throwing 94 miles per hour. They're just getting, quote-unquote, better talent. But I think you could put any one of our teams up against any one of those teams any weekend, and if a sunbelt team won the series, you'd be like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
They're good.
It wouldn't be shocking, right?
I disagree. Yeah, it would be shocking. I wouldn't say I'm not surprised.
So let me ask you this: if you took the 8th place team, took Texas State, 8th place team in the Sun Belt, and put them against the 8th place team in the ACC or the SEC, and said, "Go play a weekend series," would it shock you?
Probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Not so much for me.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all because we've seen what they're capable of. Artie agrees with
I don't know if
that.
shock is the word, but like you said, it would be. Yeah, I mean. All I'm saying is if we're going to walk around and swing it like we're one of the top conferences, then we need to talk like we're not surprised when, we need to quit acting like we are the little guy. And when we come on here every Monday, here's what we got. We got 3 teams and here's where they're looking at, we shouldn't be surprised. I don't know. I mean, this is a topic we can always talk about later, but
just for reference, the 8th place team in the ACC is Virginia, with a record of 20-15. So Virginia and Texas State played a 3-game series at a neutral field. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas State took 2 out of 3. I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia took 2 out of 3.
Right.
I guess the flip side of that coin, though, is I wouldn't be shocked if Virginia swept. I would be shocked if Texas State swept. That might be the other side of it.
Yeah. But, I mean, I still think that's respectable, right? Like, there's no like, oh, wow, well, that's disheartening to hear or anything like that.
No, this could be a super regional talk, but I think you take the top half of the Sun Belt against you put Coastal and Tennessee in a weekend series. I couldn't tell you on a neutral site. I couldn't give you an honest answer who would win that.
Yeah, That's fair too.
I would take the top half of our conference against any other conference. I would.
Yeah, you take the top 3 and put them up against a Texas, Arkansas, LSU, or a NC. Let me go back to ACC. Florida State, Clemson, Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised at all.
Wanted to hit Artie's comments real quick. He agrees with Seth. That's why the commissioner needs to do more promotion and lobbying. Yeah, I agree with that. We've seen him not go full bore when he's had the opportunity in the basketball realm of things. I haven't heard him say anything about baseball. Maybe that's me not looking.
He may not even know he's got a baseball conference, to be honest with you.
he might not. We'll have to see.
I'm not going to lie to you. Here it is, 9:37 on a Monday. All the conference games have been over for 48 hours. They've not updated the Sunbelt Conference website with pitcher of the week, hitter of the week, none of that stuff. 48 hours. I guarantee you go to SEC, ACC, they've already got previews for this weekend's midweeks, recaps for last weekend's series. Yeah, he might not have a clue.
Yeah. He's also saying that the Sun Belt should get 4 invites at minimum this year. We need some swagger. That's partly why we're here, right? Is to promote what we are watching on the field throughout the season. One thing that I'll touch on that we didn't talk about real quick, the midweeks matter more to us in the Sun Belt than they do to the SEC and the ACC. Why is that? Because, once again, those schools start way up here, and they're thought of way more highly. So when they lose conference games in season, it hardly hurts them. As Seth said, sometimes, hell, they get rewarded for a loss against a really good team. That's not happening as much in the Sun Belt because – guess what? They're not thought of as highly going into the season, so they're not being rewarded even if they do teams like Texas State has done, right? So I don't know. Go ahead.
But I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. But you gotta. we've been digging into this for 2 years now. So the outside people who know nothing about baseball, which kind of is where we started with college baseball. It's kind of where we started here. We knew a little bit, but
right.
Take a Mississippi State and a Southern Miss, somebody who knows nothing about baseball. You're like, oh, that's an SEC school. Absolutely, they should win. But a baseball fan that knows a little bit more than what we know, you look at that schedule and you say, oh, Southern Miss should take that. Those midweeks for those teams, the Troys, the Southern Misses, and the Coastals. I mean, dude, Coastal's lost 4 games all year. Like, that's –
they've lost 10.
Yeah, they lost 4 games in conference.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I've been harping. But still,
they've won 30, so you're still barking up the same tree. They won 30 games, Seth. So
you just have those expectations of – again, I don't even know where I'm at anymore. But
I think your point's valid, right? Like, you want to understand why – we're saying that we're one of the better conferences, but why we're kind of still alluding to ourselves as
why are we surprised when a Texas State beats if we're the big bad conference, and it should be another
because we're still punching up. I mean, there's to it.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say this is a bigger aspect for me right now. Why are we surprised about Texas State beating those teams? Because they haven't been very good in the conference this year. If they were 4th place in the conference and they were beating those teams, none of us would be surprised. These are the 4 teams that we talked about before the season started. Anyway,
and I would say, hell yeah, it's an amazing conference. I mean, I'll go take those 4 against anybody. Send them to Omaha right now and put 4 other teams in. Let's see what happens.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the only reason what we're saying we're surprised. Right. We thought.
I think we have the same 3 every year that we talk about. More or less. Well, Louisiana usually. There's usually 4.
Yeah, but that's success breeds consistency, right? Like, the 3 that we're always talking about are the same 3 for a reason because they've got the facilities, they've got the history, they've got the tradition, and that's why, like,
But are you a great conference if only 3 of your teams are producing?
No,
I'm just trying to argue. That's all I'm trying to do.
If you're top heavy, I mean, shit, we've got a national champion, right? Like, this conference has a national champion in it. Not in a recent national champion.
Big South.
Yeah, and don't forget about the great history that South Alabama has. They've been down for a while, but I mean, they were the best team in this conference before a lot of the other teams came into this conference. So, I mean, you've got a team there that's in a rich baseball area. in Mobile, a rich JUCO area for them to pull players in from, and the history of being a great baseball program. I mean, we've talked about it a couple times, guys. They were one of the biggest viewpoints that we had as a baseball preview. I think they may still be the most for any team that we previewed. So there is the thirst and the hunger for another team to jump up there. I think last year we had 4 teams in. This year we thought we can get 4. And before the season started, I think we were even going like, hey, maybe we can get crazy and put 5 in. Now, that's not going to happen this year. I don't think we're going to be 5. It'd be hard to be 4, but I think the 3 that we have, like you just said, Seth, you put them in Omaha tomorrow against other teams that are supposed to be in Omaha. We're not picking any of them to get swept. You know what I mean? So
you also have to think about where the Sun Belt is geographically when you talk about regionals, right? It's a regional. You're playing regional teams. We're covered up with ACC and SEC schools. You put this conference out west, and we're probably a 4 or 5 bid league every single year. But just because you've got the ACC and SEC here, it's tough to get in, and it's tough to host. So the fact that we're getting 4 in, I mean, you got to think about that. We're putting 30% of our conference in postseason play every single year and typically get a host. I mean,
all I'm saying is if we're going to sit here and talk about being a top tier conference, then we should be 3 teams shouldn't be satisfied with 3 teams.
No, I mean, I think 3 teams, and Artie's got a good point. We had 3 teams in the top 25,
right,
which is phenomenal. Once again, I think it's just where we're located. I mean, the SEC.
That's a good point.
The SEC has got 10 teams ranked. I could be wrong. I'm making that number up. That's just the first number that popped in my head. It's probably like 7, but shit, half their conference is ranked.
Yeah. Well, Artie says, come on, Commissioner Gill. Sunbelt needs better media relations, etc. It's money well spent. Budget a small amount of money into media and Sunbelt schools making revenue and ballpark improvements. But some need promotion and help from the conference. That's their job, to help with that. And it is true.
Conference does a shitty job all across the board, every single sport.
Basketball tournament especially. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
You just need to get in front of people. I mean, I think some people didn't like when the American Conference commissioner, I'm going blank on his name, was really high on his teams. What was it?
Remember they came out with that whole thing, the P6, right?
Yeah, Oresco, I think is his name. Oresco, I believe it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the P6 moniker. Everyone hated it, and he kept pushing it. But guess what? Everybody knew his name. Everybody had their conference name in their minds and their mouths because they were doing it. They were putting it in front of people. And guess what happened? Who always thinks they've got the best G5 conference when you go talk to other people? The American. It's not the Sunbelt that comes out of most people's mouths, unless you're a Sunbelt fan like we are. We're going to say it. But guess who else says it? Very few people. Because the American has the names and the brands because they've been long put in front of people's eyes and ears more than the Sunbelt teams have. So, yeah, something has to change. You got to get more.
Fake it till you make it, buddy.
Face time.
I'm glad to see somebody like Big Mike from Marshall going top 10. Hopefully, that brings a little bit of exposure to, good for Marshall. I love Marshall being in the spotlight, but, in the Sun Belt in general.
Yeah. Produce an ESPN Plus Sunbelt conference show like other small conferences already have. Hey, Artie, don't think we haven't already pushed that idea there. We may not be Pat McAfee as far as podcasts go, but if you think we haven't reached out to ESPN and hope for the best as far as getting us on one of their relevant platforms.
We'll have Seth put on a black wife beater and a belt buckle, and we'll talk shit for a couple hours.
I've already got the Pat McAfee thing of standing all show. Like, I'm ready. All right, I've been practicing. So, we would love to be those guys and be more polished and have all the fancy equipment because that's the stuff we lack. But I mean, this episode's been great. I think we really dove down into the stuff that we care about and makes us.
You got the weekend series. Did we go over that real quick? Just been like 5 minutes.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Let me put that back up. Here are the weekend series. That's a good call, Marv. I forgot we didn't go over those. So
we kind of touched on it. Texas State, Troy, big. Either way it goes, Texas State wins that series with an 85 RPI. That skyrockets them. If Troy sweeps them, then good for them. They're going to jump up. App State, Southern Miss, we've already talked about that. Probably means more to App State than it does to Southern Miss. But that's a big series. And then Georgia Southern versus the Cajuns. You got the number 90 and number 115 RPI teams going up against each other. Somebody gets catapulted. Somebody gets, just pooped on.
Yeah. Here's the downside, right? Us three here are normally pretty big App fans. If they do take the series from Southern Miss is no longer ranked. And now we're talking about two schools being ranked in the top 25 versus 3. And now we got to talk about, does Southern Miss do enough to get back up in there before the end of the year? So it's kind of good and bad. I mean, I'll take it. I'm not going to say I'm not taking it. But, you're also like, man, I still want our best teams to be up there, right? Because we still want to be rewarded.
What's one loss to JMU, 2 losses to App, 2 losses to Troy do for the conference? You're back to mediocre at that point.
Woo, that's yeah. I don't think so. I don't see. It's baseball, right? Knock on wood. I don't see Coastal struggling at all with JMU, even though it's in JMU. At JMU, I'm going to predict a sweep this weekend. Troy's playing.
I think best chances to jump on Friday night.
Now, if Caleb pitches the way he's been pitching, we get some good hits. Yeah. Hey, I mean, for any of these teams, right, running on Friday night's a big deal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you got to get that leg up. I'm interested to see what happens in that Georgia State A-State series. I know that's not the big one that everyone's going to care about. And just interesting with what A-State has been doing lately, and then Georgia State, either coming alive offensively or being kind of shut out or shut down. Like that series could have the most runs scored in any series this weekend, if you ask me. We'll see what happens, but it wouldn't shock me if those guys just all really light the scoreboard up there. So, yeah, I think that finally kind of wraps it up for us here, fellas. Any final thoughts? Anything on any other sports? You want to predict where Joey California is going to end up over there, Seth?
Already been confirmed, bro.
Is it confirmed 100%? He's announced it and everything?
Tennessee.
Wow. So basically Tennessee and UCLA just traded quarterbacks and had to pay both of them.
I think UCLA actually sent a women's basketball player in the deal. So Tennessee got a women's basketball player and a quarterback, and UCLA got a quarterback.
They got a compensatory pick. Is that what the NFL calls it, right? Everything they send something.
When you got 2 hours out of your time that we can come on here and bitch about the transfer portal, you let us know, buddy. I'd be glad to do it.
Oh, we'll have a transfer portal show. You best believe that.
When does the portal close again?
It's a good question.
We'll answer on another show. We're running long here, but yeah, it continues to be nuts. Like literally, the guy shows up in California, takes a paycheck, and then they bring in another dude, and he says, "Well, I'll just go where that dude came from," and gets paid again.
Insane. But hey, guess what? Smart business move. Okay? Smart business move. Artie Cat's saying something terrible on the screen now. Toronto will be Stanley Cup champions. Well, they're Canadian, so that's not going to happen. So the Canadians don't win cups anymore, so we're safe there. And Neil's saying Joey will do fine at UT. Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to make Nico look silly for having left because that's a good situation for any quarterback to walk into, right?
I kind of felt bad for South Alabama this past week, and then I realized, I'm good. Like, it's happening to everybody. Like, they've been depleted this past week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only downside is, right, like, the rich keep getting richer, and they just keep taking from us. I will say this. I almost don't want to put it into the atmosphere, but kind of surprised Jalen Rayner hasn't gotten some looks from A-State. So, I know he did not have the season I kind of predicted him to have, but I think he has the capability of being a Gio Lopez, right, type of player. So interesting that they didn't kind of go,
this is the last thing I'll say.
Artie's going real crazy on the hockey here. Yeah. All right, Seth, go ahead.
Not so much opposed to NIL anymore as I am the portal. Like, the portal got to be done. Got to go.
Well, that's what's hard, right? They get grouped together so often, and they're not the same thing. I want to hark on that. So many people are like, "Oh, transfer portal or NIL's awful. I think that's what. Let me rephrase that. They say, "Oh, NIL's ruining the game." I actually think NIL's fine, but like what's happened with Nico and Joey is nothing to do with NIL. It's to deal with the transfer portal and the what are they calling them now? The banks that these things are running.
The collectives.
Collectives. There you go. It's the collectives in the transfer portal that are ruining things because they're going out and going, here's our bank. Here's how much money we can offer you. That's not NIL. NIL is like, hey, the local restaurant wants to name a burger after you. We've seen that. We love that. That's awesome. And those kids are going to get a little kickback for that. That's the stuff we like. That's the stuff we want to happen. Nike wants to give them a shoe deal because they expect them to be a first-round Hall of Famer in the future. Fine. That's fine. That's a company saying we're going to give you money. It's not tied to your performance or anything you do at the school. But my problem is the same as Seth's. Like, this is now, it's a whole nother atmosphere about what you're getting. You're just giving these kids money just to come sign with you. It's free agency. Just call it what it is. It's now free agency. It's not just transfer pool.
But, Dom, you can't have one without the other. You know
Apparently
what I mean?
not.
Like,
Apparently not.
the transfer portal isn't as popular if there's not the money to go around. The money going around doesn't matter if you don't have a window for kids to move. You can't have one without the other. And it's I've said it before. I'm a huge proponent. If you were to name me commissioner of NCAA football today, I would put a cap on NIL, and you would get a one-time transfer unless the coach left. Then you could get two, but that's it. And you have to stay at school for a full year. Like Joey Aguilar, wish him nothing but success. You transfer to UCLA, you stay there. Sorry, you can't go get money and then leave. You commit, you got to stay. But you cap it at, $1 million a year or whatever. There's some kind of algorithm or mean average you can come up with. So that way we can't, Alabama can't pay you any more than Notre Dame, right? So if all things were equal, where do you want to be? And it's not just hey, well, they said they give me 1.5. They'll give me 2.5. Like, that's bull crap. This is free agency. It's taking the amateurism completely out of it. They can call it whatever they want to call it. This is minor league NFL. And for programs like us in the sunbelt, it takes away the developmental aspect, in my opinion. Like, God forbid you get a kid out of high school that no one wanted because he was a little undersized and he goes out there and has a phenomenal year. You know damn well he's gone. And that kills programs like most mid-major programs that have to develop. And it's the biggest crap. Seth says it all the time. I'm like 2 years away from not watching college football.
Yeah. I liked it a lot better when nobody knew they got paid.
It's true. It's sadly true. It really is. I'll leave one last note on that because I agree with what you guys have said. My biggest problem though right now is these kids are getting paid more than their counterparts in the NFL. That's not right to me, right? Like these guys are going through the NFL. This is their only job, and they're making less than some of these kids in college who are also getting education and kickbacks in other forms. Like I got a problem with that. I just hate it. But I think
they've opened that box. They can't close it now. I mean, that's
true. It's true. They kind of did it the wrong way. They panic mode, I think. Just put this out there and we're like, we'll just deal with it. But that's the wrong way.
Repercussion, though, you already had the rule where you had to play 2 years before you could go pro. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we got to give these kids money or they'll leave. And the lawsuit was a bunch of crap, right? Like, hindsight's always 20/20, but someone, and you'd like to think there's a lot of smart people, right? Because these people got a shit ton of money. So typically people with a lot of money have made some really good decisions in their life, would have said, hey, this could escalate really quickly. Let's go ahead and stop that from happening. And no one did it.
The NCAA took it. The NCAA listened to it for so many years. They finally just threw their hands up and said, you know what? This is what you want. You deal with it.
And here's what the NCAA did. They said, oh, there's more money floating around. Let's expand this playoff so that we can get more TV money. Yeah. Let's do this. Yeah, they're making more money. We'll make more money. This is great.
Well, technically, NCAA doesn't run the CFP, but, there's still an aspect where they're getting money from indirect.
They're making money.
Yeah. Are you saying a base 7-figure should be more than enough for teenagers? You could play 4+ years and leave a millionaire and relax for the rest of your life. Yeah, if you're smart with your money, I think that's it. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for tonight. This was awesome. We're gonna chop this one up and get some of these clips out there because some of these things were great. So Thank you all for tuning in, and we will certainly see you next week. Look for some stuff from us on Friday, too, on the socials. See y'all.
See you.